Greetings, history enthusiasts. Today we embark on a journey back to the medieval times, a period steeped in mystery, adventure, and transformation. A time when knights jousted, monarchs ruled, and the church held sway over the hearts and minds of the people. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's start at the beginning, shall we? The medieval times, also known as the Middle Ages, spanned a period of roughly 1,000 years. From the fall of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century to the dawn of the Renaissance in the 15th century. It was an era marked by dramatic shifts in social structure, political power, and cultural norms. A central aspect of medieval society was the feudal system, a hierarchical structure where the king granted land to his most important noblemen, known as lords. These lords, in return, provided the king with military service and pledged their loyalty. This system structured society and defined relationships between people, from the highest noble to the lowest serf. The church, too, played a pivotal role during the medieval times. It was not just a religious institution, but a powerful political entity, influencing everything from laws to education. The church's influence was so encompassing that it permeated every aspect of life, shaping the moral framework of the society. And who can forget the knights, the embodiment of chivalry and martial prowess? They were the champions of the battlefield, upholding codes of honor, courage, and loyalty. Their tales of heroism and valor still resonate today, adding a touch of romance to the otherwise harsh realities of the Middle Ages. This era, with its unique blend of conflict and culture, set the stage for modern Europe. It was a crucible in which nations were forged, ideas were born, and foundations were laid for future developments. Now, having established the context, we delve into the intriguing events that led to the end of this era. From plagues and social shifts to the dawn of a new age of enlightenment, the fall of the medieval times was as dramatic as its rise. So, buckle up, for we're about to unravel the tapestry of history, thread by thread. Imagine a world plunged into chaos as a deadly plague sweeps across the land. This was the reality of the 14th century when the Black Death struck. The Black Death, also known as the bubonic plague, was a lethal pandemic that ravaged Europe, causing a seismic shift in the societal structure of the Middle Ages. It was a silent, invisible killer, arriving on merchant ships carrying fleas on rats. It spread rapidly and ruthlessly, decimating towns and cities, leaving in its wake a trail of death and despair. The plague began in the east and swept westward, leaving no corner of Europe untouched. In just a few short years, between 1347 and 1351, the Black Death claimed the lives of an estimated 25 million people, nearly 1/3 of Europe's population at the time. This massive population decline had profound socio-economic implications. The feudal system, which had been the backbone of medieval society, began to crumble under the weight of the Black Death. The loss of labor meant that fields lay fallow and crops rotted. The shortage of workers led to a rise in wages, and serfs, who were no longer bound to the land due to the labor shortage, began to demand better working conditions and higher pay. These changes in labor dynamics began to erode the established social hierarchy. The church, too, saw its influence wane. The clergy were not spared from the plague. Many who ministered to the sick became victims themselves. The church's inability to provide effective solutions or comfort during the plague led many to question its authority and the existing religious beliefs. In the face of such widespread death and devastation, people began to question the status quo, leading to an increase in dissent and a desire for change. This radical shift in societal norms and values was a precursor to the end of the Middle Ages. The Black Death was a catastrophic event that shook the foundations of medieval society, setting the stage for radical changes. As the dust of the Black Death settled, a new social class began to emerge, the middle class. The Black Death was a catalyst for change, not just in terms of population, but in the way society was structured. With so many lives lost, labor became a valuable commodity. Those who were once bound to the land by the feudal system suddenly found themselves with leverage. This was the spark that lit the fire, leading to the rise of a new social class, the middle class. Trade and commerce began to flourish. Towns and cities grew, and with them a new breed of merchants and artisans. These were not the nobility with their lands and titles, but nor were they the serfs tied to the land. They were something in between. The middle class. They were the blacksmiths and the bakers, the weavers and the tailors, the traders and the shopkeepers. Their rise was not just an economic shift, but a social one. The middle class began to challenge the existing feudal system. They demanded rights and privileges that had once been the exclusive domain of the nobility. They wanted the freedom to trade, to move, to live their lives as they saw fit. They sought to break the chains of feudal servitude and to claim a place in society that was based not on birth but on merit. They used their newfound wealth to influence politics, buying charters that granted them more autonomy. They built guilds to protect their interests and to regulate trade. They used their collective power to push for reforms, challenging the status quo and shaking the foundations of the feudal system. The rise of the middle class was more than just a change in the economic landscape. It was a seismic shift in the way society was structured. It was a challenge to the established order, a challenge that would ultimately lead to its demise. The rise of the middle class signaled a shift in power dynamics, further pushing society towards the end of the medieval times. The world was on the cusp of a new era as the Renaissance brought about a cultural revolution and the Age of Discovery expanded horizons. Let's delve into the Renaissance first, shall we? This was a time when the arts, science, and thought experienced a rebirth. It was as if humanity had been sleepwalking through the Middle Ages, and now they had finally awakened, eyes wide open to the beauty and possibilities around them. Artists like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo broke the chains of traditional medieval styles, introducing perspective, realism, and a focus on the human form. These trailblazers painted, sculpted, and sketched their way into history, their works becoming timeless masterpieces that still captivate us today. In the realm of science, the Renaissance was no less transformative. Figures like Galileo Galilei and Nicholas Copernicus dared to challenge the geocentric model of the universe, a belief held sacrosanct since antiquity. Their heliocentric theory, placing the sun at the center, was revolutionary and quite literally earth-shaking. Now let's set sail to the Age of Discovery. This era saw European explorers traverse uncharted waters, driven by a thirst for knowledge and a hunger for wealth. They ventured across vast oceans, braved treacherous terrains, and discovered new lands, cultures, and peoples. Christopher Columbus, Vasco da Gama, Ferdinand Magellan, these were not just men. They were harbingers of change. Their voyages didn't just redraw maps. They expanded worldviews, encouraging exploration and fostering cultural exchange. These explorations brought about an unprecedented global interconnectedness. Goods, ideas, and even diseases were exchanged, marking the beginning of globalization. But it was not without its dark side, as it also paved the way for colonialism and exploitation. These twin revolutions, the Renaissance and the Age of Discovery, upended the medieval status quo. They challenged old beliefs, sparked curiosity, and nurtured innovation. The world was no longer a patchwork of isolated feudal societies. It was becoming a vast, interconnected tapestry, teeming with possibilities. These twin revolutions marked the end of the insular feudal medieval society and ushered in the modern age. So, what brought about the end of the medieval times? The answer, as we have seen, lies in a series of transformative events. As we journeyed through the annals of history, we delved deep into the cataclysmic event of the Black Death. This merciless plague that swept across Europe, decimating populations, radically altered the social and economic landscape. It was a somber period, yes, but it also marked the beginning of profound changes. Following the Black Death, we witnessed the rise of the middle class. With the labor shortage post-plague, the survivors found themselves in an unprecedented position of power. They could demand higher wages and better conditions. This shift in economic power led to the emergence of a new class of merchants and artisans who would eventually challenge the feudal system and paved the way for modern capitalism. Then, we embarked on the journey through the vibrant period of the Renaissance. This was a time of flourishing arts, culture, and intellectual pursuits, a stark contrast to the grim realities of the previous centuries. The Renaissance, with its emphasis on humanism and individualism, brought a new perspective to the world, challenging the rigid norms of the medieval times. Our journey concluded with the Age of Discovery. This era of exploration expanded horizons both literally and metaphorically. New lands were discovered, trade routes were established, and the world became a smaller, more connected place. This period marked the final blow to the medieval worldview, as the concept of a flat earth was finally put to rest. In connecting these historical events, it becomes clear that the end of the medieval times was not an abrupt, singular event. Rather, it was a gradual transition, a series of stages marked by significant societal changes. Each event fed into the other, creating a domino effect that ultimately led to the dawn of the modern era. Thus, the end of the medieval times was not a sudden event, but a gradual transition marked by significant societal changes. Until our next historical journey, stay curious and keep exploring.